welcome back to Talking Ted, a Pop Cult X show. We're here chatting. My name is Danny, first of all, along with Tori. We're here to talk about all things Ted Lasso, and that means this time we're on episode 8, We'll Never Have Paris.
Perfect title for this episode. And we'll get to that in a second, but this one was a wild one. And a scene from this episode has been highly contested on Twitter. Ooh. I think we saw it in all of the previews. Okay, Ted and his son at the not the AFC Richmond match, but
the
West Ham United. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to that. You want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this episode it had a lot of different storylines, like much of their episodes have this year that seem to be, or this season seem to be down their own paths and not crisscrossing like usual, which is okay. Each person is their own individual and we get to learn about them separately from, the United cast, I guess. So, I mean, we see there's there's Nate's storyline, there's Keely and Jack's storyline, there's Ted's storyline, there's Jake and Michelle, and it all centers around, Ted Lasso, but I think it all also spreads out to what these characters are doing and who they are in their lives. So I thought it was really great. I enjoyed it. I mean, some people, I think I read that aren't too happy with the disjointedness of it, but I didn't have a problem with it.
I think one of the things about that commentary, though, is that's life, is it not? I mean, we can't just all be in the same place all the time. In the real world, people get traded to other teams. And that happened in season 1. Jamie temporarily left, but people have their own separate lives outside of work.
Right.
And so I think that this is a lot more true to actual how real life goes. It does feel a little disjointed, a little disconnected. I do miss the big happy family together, but I don't think we're going to necessarily family one. I mean, because Roy and Keely are together, and that's a big riff in the locker room. And there might be some potential for Keely dating someone new. So I'm all about it because I think this is where art imitates life. And this is very much how real life feels. We all have our own little storylines going on the sides.
Absolutely.
We're not all in each other's face all the time. So I thought it felt real. And it was kind of refreshing to me. But I can see why people maybe didn't like that or maybe didn't appreciate it. And they just want this big, happy family back together again. We'll get there, people. We will get there. But remember, you got to go through the dark forest first.
That's true. And I think the happy family is going to have a few different meanings. And I'm going to ask you this at the end of this episode, what your prediction is for the final, give us your wildest prediction for how the season's going to end. So I want to ask you that because we have this is episode 8, so we have 4 episods left.
Yes.
So I want to
this is a 12 episode season, people, because everyone's freaking out on Twitter thinking there's only 2 episodes left.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask just your wildest prediction. I have mine and I want to see what yours is, and we'll kind of compare that at the end of this episode. But let's talk a little bit about Keely and her leak and Jack, and how that dynamic is changing and morphing. Remember, they're in a new beginning of a relationship. So there's all that stress that goes around with that, wanting to please your new love interest and trying to make it work. And then this big leak happens.
But this is also so real life too, right? So essentially what happens is, a lot of these celebrities, models, athletes, superstars, mostly women, had their private pictures instead of pictures leaked. And they were all over the internet. And one of them, of course, was Keely's. And we talked about this a little last week. I was kind of disappointed in her storyline because I felt like they weren't necessarily giving her much. But I think that they really redeemed themselves a little bit this week, showing how strong she really is and independent. And, she has really grown a lot from season 1. Anyway, so she's part of this big leak. And as a business owner now, the head of a company, she has to make a decision. Do I address this or do I just pretend it didn't happen? And her girlfriend, Jack, her investor, sends her this statement. At first she's very supportive, right? Like, oh, this happens. Like, it's not your fault. You can't control it. It's going to be okay. So we're kind of rooting for Jack at this point. But, Keely talks to Rebecca about it. And Rebecca's a little, give her a chance to respond, see how she takes it, and comes back with a letter for the company. And she wants Keely to release it. And this letter sort of apologizes for this leak. And it's the way that the letter's written, you're kind of like, it says like, I'm very embarrassed. I should have never made this video in the first place.
I'll learn from my actions and use this chance to grow. And it's
almost a little degrading of a letter.
I agree. I didn't like it at all.
No. And like I said, Rebecca is like, it's political jargon, it's lawyer jargon. Like her lawyers probably wrote it, whatever. Give her a chance. And so we hear Kaylee reading this letter and she's very heartbroken and she's kind of torn about maybe where her and Jack stand.
Yeah.
And so it's just this moment of Keely really growing into herself and figuring out the woman that she wants to be. And I think Rebecca made a great point. Like, yes, this is embarrassing and this happens, but it's going to be okay. And you can inspire so many women from this. Who
don't have dogs. Yeah.
Yes. So she said, you can use this for good, right? And you can turn this into something good. And so I think Rebecca just stepped up as the great friend that she was. And, season 1, Keely was there for her, talking about Rebecca's topless picture on the yacht. So they both sort of experienced and can bond through this. So I thought that was really impactful, Rebecca being there for her. And I think we saw a new side to Jack when it came to mitigation of issues in the office.
Yeah, and I think we saw the new side of Jack in that she went to her dad for advice, right? And that's when the lawyers got involved. And I think it's because I guess I don't know. I think she's a trust fund baby, you would say, right? So all her money comes from her father. So we see that side of her where she's gonna always lean on her father and do what he says in a way. I think because at the end of the episode or toward the end, when they have their argument and spat about that letter and Keely not wanting to release it, which I think is great because it wasn't her fault. And to say it's my fault, I'm sorry, is basically you're saying you're to blame and she wasn't to blame. And yes, of course, once you put something out on the internet, it's always going to be there for however long the internet is around, right? So yes, that's one thing you can learn from, but you can't go into it expecting to be, hacked or whatever. And it's just, it wasn't her fault. And I think the fact that Jack says or sees it as embarrassing to her and her father's brand, and it maybe is like, I can't be affiliated with that. So it's like, where's that coming? Is that coming from Jack or is that coming from her father? And wanting not to mess that up. Exactly.
Well, at first we think it's coming from her father, right? Because not just be her girlfriend, but be a friend. So not a boss, not an investor, a friend, an empathetic female, a woman who, if she was in the same position, Keely would have been there. So we'll fast forward a little bit. They go on a date. They're supposed to go to a polo match together. And it was supposed to be with some very wealthy people. And she was going to go and show Keely off in front of everybody. And then this happens. Keely's all excited and she buys this beautiful dress to go to the event. And she shows up and Jack says, "Oh, sorry, I canceled the event." And you can just tell Keely was totally heartbroken because she knew, she canceled it because, she kind of has an inkling. Maybe she canceled it because she's embarrassed about me. Exactly. But Jack just says like, "Oh no, I just didn't think you wanted to be there in front of the press." Right. So we're thinking she's trying to help. Fast forward a little bit more. Instead of going to there, they go to a mini putt date. And they run into one of Jack's old classmates.
Yep.
And Jack introduces Keely as her friend.
Yeah.
Instead of her girlfriend. What were your thoughts on that? I mean, that was ouch. I mean, knife to the heart.
That was harsh. I mean, it's like any rom-com or any thing you see where it's like, oh, this is my friend. So they're either embarrassed B don't want to. It's just not a real, true love for them. So it's just a passing fancy, maybe. So they're like, "Oh, it's just my friend." And yes, that was kind of hurtful, and I felt bad for Keely in that moment. And it's just, but at the same token, I don't know. I think Jack is out, right? All her
She
friends might
seems
know.
to be very much.
Yeah.
She seems to be very much out. I mean, before she was going to be showing her off in front of all her
Yeah. Okay.
friends and
Okay. Yeah. So that's yeah.
She very openly welcomed
Mm-hmm.
um, Keely, at the office and outed
That's
her at
true.
the office.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
But I think she was out, but I think I don't know how that was with maybe friends from university. That might be a little different. But regardless, I mean, a slap in the face to Keely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it was because she wasn't out. I think it was because she was embarrassed. And I think that became clear in a later scene immediately after that, where she pretty much just told Keely, like, look, if you don't release this, then if you don't release this statement, I don't think I can hang out with you anymore because I don't want to be associated with someone like this.
Right.
So she straight up comes out and says it at that point.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, are you coming? And she goes, I don't know, and walks out.
Right.
So rough. I mean, such a hard moment for Keely, who is just hurting right now, not just because of her heartbreak with Roy, but because of this big scandal. And, she does the redeeming arc and showed up when she needed a friend the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and at the end of the episode, I almost forgot about this. Another shining moment, redemption arc here continues for Jamie Tart, who will, I'm telling you, that was just such a beautiful moment at the end of the show where, he shows up, what's going on, because we never found out who that video was supposed to go to. Right. And that was also another hurtful moment for Keely whenever Roy comes up, right? Mm-hmm. They find out, everyone in the locker room finds out, the team stands up in Saudi, and our captain, Isaac McAdoo, tells everyone to delete everything on their phones, and avoid this from happening, because once they find out that it was Keely, everyone wants to do their part to help. But instead of helping, Roy kind of goes up to Keely, but then he asks, who was it for? And Keely goes, what? And he goes, who were you sending it to? I mean, they're done, bro. They're done. There's no redemption. Like, I'm sorry. Anyone who was rooting for Roy and Keely to get back together, it's not happening anymore. Like, that was the end. What? I mean, do you think there's any opportunity to make up there? I think it's over.
I think there is. I mean, I agree. It probably is over. But you never rule anything out with Ted Lasso writers. So,
true.
I mean, yeah, he's been saying the wrong thing to her the whole season, it seems like, right? So he keeps flummoxing his words. He keeps, which I think is the way the writers are showing that he's trying, because he's he doesn't know the right words to say to express how he feels and make up for it, right? For what his actions. So maybe this was like the nail in the coffin, like you said, and it could be just the final, that's it, no more hope for them. But we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I want to get back a little bit though to what you said about the locker room, because I thought something was interesting in there, that Captain Isaac said they had a debate about whether or not they should delete the photos. Some people were saying yes. Some people were saying no, those are my memories. Why should I have, especially Colin, why should I have to worry about what other people might do? And Isaac says, oh no, because they wanted to look at them. And Isaac said, no, don't, because those weren't meant for us. Which I thought was, that's really the best way to go about it, because those pictures, they're not meant for us. So we shouldn't be, spying on them and looking at them. Right. But fast forward a little bit to after the whole delete all your photos, and everyone begrudgingly agrees to it, and Colin walks out. We see him on a bench outside of the locker room going through his photos. Isaac walks up and snatches his phone from him, which I thought was counter to what he said about those photos aren't meant for us. Because what's on Colin's phone isn't meant for Isaac, so why is he taking it from him? So I was that
True, but there, Colin he was pushing back, and so Isaac only took it because he thought that he wasn't listening, and he thought he was going to keep the pictures. But
that's
I'm also
true.
with you. Like you don't yank a man's phone out of his hand, you know. So that was kind of,
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a big. I mean, what happened after that?
But then, we see by the expression on Colin's face that he was obviously looking at pictures of his boyfriend or his partner or people that have sent him pictures, and
Yeah.
no one else in the locker room aside from Trent Krim knows about his status. So Isaac must see this, gives him a little bit of a side eye, gives him his phone back, and walks away. So I think in the next episode we're gonna dive into that a little more. But
I think so. But I don't think it was necessarily like side eye. I think once Isaac was going through it, he understood what was happening, and
yeah, no, I agree.
he understood the gravity of the
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah,
Because I feel like side eye has a little negative connotation to it, you know, because like I think
that's
side eye.
true.
He kind of looked at the phone, looked at Colin, nodded, like an understanding, like, "Hey, I get you, bro." Like, handed him his phone back and walked away. Like, we'll talk about this. We'll unpack this when you're ready.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, side eye probably wasn't the right word, but yeah, he just kind of glanced at him out of the corner of his eye. Yeah, you're right.
Man, that was a powerful moment though, because he could have gone off. He could have called him out. He could have made it very public. But I think this shows Isaac stepping up as a captain, as a leader on the team, being very sensitive. He's a lot more sensitive than he puts off. You know, he acts like he's a bad boy and he's this, just this meanie who doesn't care. But the way that he responded in that situation, I think was very caring and sensitive to like, all right, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. Me and me and Colin will walk this out when he's ready.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that's the way it goes. Yeah.
We'll see, though. I think you're right. I think this will come up. It's been inevitable. I mean, it's been leading to this.
Yeah, it has.
Right. You can't hide this forever. And that's what Trent was trying to say, too. Like this, you can't just have these two separate pieces of you and these two separate people and pretend like they're completely different. And so I think next episode or later on, I think it's going to come out and we're going to have a discussion about Colin and what it's like being a gay professional footballer in the world a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an impactful conversation, and I'm curious to see how the writers handle it. So I'm looking forward to the next episode where I think it will happen.
So let's talk about Jamie, right? He really stepped up this episode whenever we eventually find out the video that leaked of Keely was something that she had sent privately to Jamie, assuming when they were dating. And he shows up at her house, very apologetic, and we're not really sure what he's going to say. But I think this is another moment where we really see the impact that Ted has had on Jamie's life.
Yeah.
And he knows in this moment, this is not necessarily my fault, but I didn't do my part to protect you. And I'm sorry. And of course, there's a little humor thrown in there with, well, what was your password, Jamie? And he was like, well, my password was password, but don't worry, I threw in an extra N. And he's like, and it's like, there's 2 S's in password already, bro. So we get classic Jamie back a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's classic.
What a moment, man. I mean, just character arc growth. This was the full of Jamie in the entire series.
Yeah.
Really owning up to his mistake. That was the issue with Keely dating him in season 1. He never apologized. He never takes accountability. And although this technically wasn't his fault, right? It was a hacker. He stepped up and took responsibility anyways. I thought that was such a great look into how much he's really developed over the past 3 seasons. And Keely, of course, forgives him and understands. Yeah. So a lot of people are now wondering, is he and Jamie's heart getting back together? I don't know. Maybe. I think I'm not opposed to it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I mean, Jamie always seems to be pining after her as the one who got away. So Yeah, I can definitely see that. And you're right about Jamie Tart and Phil Dunster. He's doing a fantastic job this season. And yes, the Emmy should be his. I completely agree with that. And yeah, Jamie's character arc and growth has been really a joy to watch because it's what you're rooting for with characters, right? You're really rooting for them to learn and to grow and to become better. Just like with Nate as well. So
Wait,
Nate storyline in this episode, we see his relationship with our favorite hostess with the mostest, Jade, and how it's grown and how they went from one date to now they're sleeping over at each other's houses. And, Nate is, brushing his teeth in the morning and shaving and showering and using the restroom next door or something all before she wakes up, just to be prim and proper and ready for her. It's which I thought was really cool because we always see that in movies from the female perspective, where the female, puts on her makeup, tosses her hair to look, I don't want to say presentable, but to look alluring and like at her best for when the partner wakes up. So it was funny to see that was Nate's moment to do that. I thought that was hilarious.
I loved it. I love their relationship. I think that was the big question in this episode was, are they, aren't they? What are they? What is able? And Nate is sort of struggling to, is she my girlfriend? Or are we just kind of hooking up? I don't know. And so he kind of goes through this entire episode. He tries to, copycat the Diamond Dogs. What did he call them?
Love hounds.
Oh my God, horrible. Very, by the way, that Rupert did not show up to that meeting or care to show up at all.
Mm-hmm.
That the two coaches that did show up kept asking if they were in trouble.
Right.
In trouble, but they're obviously very uncomfortable with emotions. But then I think it just shows you how healthy Ted and his aura and his coaching method is that he brings to AFC. I mean, you can be men and talk about feelings.
Mm-hmm.
What a beautiful thing. And then here we see what the real world really is like, and it's uncomfortable, and they don't want to talk about their feelings. And so a miserable fail on Nate's part. Eventually, he just has to find out that I just got to talk to Jade about it myself.
Mm-hmm.
I just got to go. And eventually the topic comes up and she calls him her boyfriend. Right. And that's when he sort of realizes, okay, I'm not struggling anymore. Like, we're exclusive. Like, this is my girlfriend. Like, she does like me. This is more than just, a fling.
Right.
So it was nice to see that character growth there. But we also didn't just see Nate struggling with that. We also saw him struggling with some guests who showed up in the audience.
Yes. So let's talk about that. So as we know, Henry is there in London visiting with his mom, Michelle, and Dr. Jacob for a surprise. I don't know, maybe it was a planned visit, but they're there. And so Henry's spending the weekend with his dad. And the one thing he wants to do on Ted Lasso's day off is go watch a football match. So, so the only game in town that day, of course, is the West Ham United game. So I'm guessing they pull some strings, get their tickets, and they show up in the stands. Of course, as the game's starting, pregame, we hear Henry yelling out to Nate, because they had a good relationship, right?
Yeah,
so they were friendly.
Oh, he doesn't understand.
Yeah. So we see finally they get Nate's attention, and Nate looks back and sees them, and Henry's waving, and Ted Lasso's like, I don't know, and we see a slight little smile on Nate's face, which fast forward to when Nate gets Rupert's text about sorry about Ted in the stands, won't happen again, and we see him initially type back, it's okay, I thought it was funny, but then because he can't deal with Rupert that way, he deletes it and puts good thank you. So he's playing that part for Rupert, but I think his true self is, that what we've seen with him in his relationship with Jade, with his relationship with his family, the true Nate is there, but he has to hide it, what he thinks maintain his job with Rupert.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a fight within himself. He doesn't necessarily know who he wants to be. He knows who he is, but he has to wear different masks depending on who he's around.
Exactly.
And I think he's going to slip up here soon. I think he's going to slip up in front of Rupert. I think there's going to be a confrontation that's going to happen, and he's going to have to choose who he wants to be.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it was very telling that he saw them in the crowd and smiled instead of, just kind of flipped. He could have done anything, flipped them off, ignored them, whatever. I also love that Coach Beard was decked out in AFC Richmond gear by
just standing there.
Touch. Of course, Ted has to support his son, right? But kind of the friend. And so the day continues, right? They're all having a great day. Ted is so concerned about his ex-wife going to Paris with Dr. Jacob. And he swears that they're going to get engaged there, right? He swears that because that's where people go, right? When they're in love, they go to Paris and they get in. What happens? And of course, we find out he's telling everyone this. He tells Rebecca. He talks to the Diamond Dogs. We see this very where Trent Grimm is now a part of the Diamond Dogs, which that's I love. Funny. That was such a great inclusion. I'm glad it. His little woof at the end. But I think we have a really important conversation between Rebecca and Ted when Ted's asking her, hey, can you hire a private investigator? I need to follow them around. And it's like, Ted, this is all in your head, bro. Like, you're way overthinking. And Rebecca initially says she'll help him, but later on they're at the pub and Rebecca gives him a call and he steps away from his own son to take the call. And this is when Rebecca kind of puts some sense into him, like, dude, what are you doing? It's your ex-wife. Why do you care about who she's dating? If she gets proposed, it doesn't matter. Right. So you want to take it away from what happens next?
Yeah. And I think so when Ted gets the text from Rebecca and he's goes to talk to her, Hey Jude is playing in the background at the pub. And so we hear Coach Beard and Henry have a little conversation about, this, and Beard unpacks what the song means and then how it kind of pertains to Henry himself. So I thought that was really cool, really, really well done and thoughtful. And of course, we see Rebecca, like you said, say, why do you need to know? And then she finally snaps him out of it, says, go back with and sing Hey Jude with your son. So I thought that was really cool that, she finally got him over that hump, so to speak, but not completely, because at the end of the episode, when Henry's leaving with Michelle, we see that when he's handing her Henry's backpack, he looks at her hand to see if there was an engagement ring there. And
he's trying hard.
He is trying hard. And then he watches the interactions with Michelle and Dr. Jacob and Henry and Dr. Jacob. And he sees, and we see that it's not, maybe it's not as bright as we thought it was. Maybe it's not as, lovely and wistful and romantic. Maybe there's just, a little different kind of relationship than we thought.
Yeah, that's how I felt too, because Henry didn't give him a high five, didn't talk to him like you said, and just kind of jumped in the car. And there's sort of an awkward interaction between him and Michelle. And so I think Ted has this vision of their relationship in his head that's not even probably accurate to what's actually happening. Becca has divorced and she's been through Rupert moving on and she's been through Rupert getting remarried and having a baby. And so she's been through this, but Ted hasn't.
Right.
So she's there for him, telling him, hey, don't freak out about something that might not even happen. And then it didn't even happen.
Yeah.
He wasted the day worrying so much about what may or may not happen with them when he should have and could have been spending all his time with his son. So I think that was a lesson learned from Ted there. Some people on Twitter are freaking out, thinking that this look back between Michelle and Ted at the very end is that they're going to get back together. Y'all people know. No, I'm going to say no. Cut that off right there. No, I don't see that happening. I don't think it would be fair to either of their characters, especially Ted, who has gone through so much growth, learning to be on his own and be independent. And I think he deserves someone who's going to love him for who he is and all of who he is, and Michelle wasn't that. So I'm gonna shut down that theory real quick.
Okay. Well,
but people did notice that I have to mention it, obviously. Viral on Twitter there.
I mean, I think I would fall into that camp, and that comes up to my what I want to ask you about predictions for the end of the rest of the season, like one big moment prediction from you. But before we get to that, real quick, um, we forgot to mention that AFC Richmond's been on like a 4-game win streak ever since
That's
they switched over to Total Football and Jamie as what they call the facilitator, right? So he's the one passing around, distributing it. And I thought that was an interesting, as the episode went along, that Rebecca kind of plays that role in the whole life. She's helping everyone else out, right? So she's like the facilitator there. So I thought that was interesting.
I didn't even realize that until literally you just said it. That's a great theory.
Yeah,
I love that idea.
So I mean, as the team goes, so does she. She's racking up the wins with Keely, with Ted, and she's distributing and passing along. So I thought that was really cool.
Look at you. That is a great insight, man. I totally missed that. That literally went right over my head, bro. Like I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's great. That's really great. I will add to that and say I think she's so good at being there for people, especially Ted. Here's my wild theory.
Okay, give me your prediction here.
We see the team's success, right? Jamie is stepping up. It is wonderful, and I think they're going to make it to the finals. I think they're going to play against West Ham, and I predict that Ted and Rebecca are going to finally realize just how much they've been there for each other and how well they work with each other, and just that they just genuinely care. I mean, he continues to bring her biscuits every day, and that was a little moment I saw as well, right? That's still happening. It's been 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think that they're going to finally realize who they are towards each other is exactly the person that they've wanted this entire time.
Okay.
Whether that means that they're going to get back here, whether that means they're going to be romantically involved or not, I don't know. Of course, I'm a Ted Becca stan, so I would love to see them get together. I think they're soulmates, but whether that means that they're romantically linked or not, I think that they're going to finally look at that person and realize you are someone that I'm supposed to be looking for. And then they're finally going to understand their value. And if someone doesn't value them like that, they're not worth their time.
Okay.
So, and I also think Keely and I think Keely and Jamie are going to get back together. I would never have said that. But I also think there were some hints leading up towards it from season 2 at the funeral.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
So, there's no accidents in this show. These are my crazy theories. I don't know what's going to happen. I think Ted's obviously going to go back home to Kansas. And I don't know what's going to happen with Rebecca. I think Beard's going to stay.
Yeah. He fits the European lifestyle and culture very well. So, yes. I mean, my prediction is, like you said, Ted goes back to Kansas. Him and Michelle do get back together. Sorry, that's my thought. And they do it mainly because he does it for Henry, as one of the major reasons. Nate leaves West Ham and becomes the coach of AFC Richmond.
Yes, I also agree with that part. That's very interesting that you're pro Michelle and Ted getting back together.
Yeah.
My question before you go, do you not think that if it ends like that, do you not think that cancels out all the growth that he's had at Richmond?
No, not at all. What? Because he's growing as a person, and he's taking that growth with him. He's not just leaving it there in London. He's taking it with him, and so he can be the kind of person I want to say that Michelle always hoped he would be. So maybe she sees that growth in him, and because I think he still loves her very much.
Yes.
And so he's taken everything he's learned, at least I think, and all the growth he's made, and he's taken that back with him. What he does with it there and how much he continues to grow is up to him, obviously, in his relationship there. And maybe the separation between the two is what is making it easier. So maybe when they're back in the day and day, maybe it's harder to grow and to maintain and keep that growth. But I think it's what he's wanted, I feel, from the very beginning. And yeah, I think he's going to keep it. He's going to keep growing.
Wow. Okay, you know what? Mad respect. I had totally dismissed that theory earlier. And now that you sort of explain it, I think that I can totally see where you're coming from. And how it could still, you know, add to his arc and show his growth. I didn't think about that. Okay, now the wheels are turning.
Yay.
The wheels are turning. I personally, like I said, I'm still Ted Becca, but you've given me new perspective today, so thank you.
You're welcome. And everyone out there, if you're watching, let us know what you think. Where's Ted gonna go with all this? What are your predictions or your wildest crazy prediction? Let us know so we can talk about it next week.
Woo!
So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week for episode 9.
Bye y'all.